Hello to all Cinemaster lovers. Hope you enjoy watching. Let's get started. The film begins. Hart wakes up to find herself on a deserted island in the middle of the sea, facing a predatory creature that she must confront to survive. On an island in the middle of the sea, we see a girl named Jane unconscious on the beach, wearing a life jacket because the yacht she was on sank and the rest of her friends drowned. When she wakes up, Jane interacts with the island and finds her friend Brad lying unconscious on the ground next to her. She runs towards him, and when she reaches him, she discovers a piece of coral embedded in his body in a very dangerous place and screams for help, hoping someone on the island will assist them, but no one appears. Jane takes off the life jacket, drags Brad from the water, removes the piece of coral that stabbed him from his abdomen, and applies pressure to his wound. After that, Jane enters the island's forest in search of anything she can feed Brad, finding a coconut, breaking it, and quickly returning to Brad to give him coconut water. But unfortunately, she discovers that Brad has died, and Jane cries because he has died, leaving her alone on this island where there is no one. Jane begins to explore the island until she returns to Brad's corpse and realizes she is moving in circles. She goes back into the forest and continues walking, and suddenly finds a bag hanging from a tree containing drinks. Jane thinks again, suspecting that someone might be on the island, but no one responds. She opens the bag and finds medicine dated 1994, realizing there is no one on the island but her, and the last people were there since 1994. Jane finds a box on the ground containing matches, papers, and some other items, and another bag containing personal belongings, toys for a child, a car radio, a book, a teddy bear, and a small metal box. Jane returns to the beach and hears a strange sound inside an open tree branch and discovers it is empty, so she gathers leaves and places them on Brad's corpse. At night, a storm brings heavy rain, so Jane sits under the leaves. The next day, Jane finds fish washed ashore, collecting all the fish to eat. Suddenly, she finds a small shark in front of her cut in half, with large wounds on it, and Jane keeps looking at it, wondering what could have done that. Later, Jane tries to clean the fish using a stone on a flat part she made like a knife, but she gets tired, leaves the stone and fish, and goes to retrieve her cold drink, takes out her diary, and finds that the water has washed away all the ink, so Jane keeps looking at her pictures with her boyfriend. After a while in the forest, Jane finds a new place but realizes it is the graves of 3 people, so she gets scared and quickly returns to the beach, finding that Brad's corpse has decayed. She buries him next to the forest, digs a grave for him, and marks the spot with wood so she won't forget it. At night, Jane grills the fish over the fire she lit with the matches she found, eats, and sleeps. During the day, Jane walks around the island looking for any food or anything that can keep her alive as long as possible. But when she reaches Brad's grave, she is shocked to find his body missing and that something has dragged it away. Jane feels scared and makes a spear to defend herself. After finishing, she stands and looks around because she fears someone might be present and could kill her, but she finds nothing. At the end of the day, Jane sits holding her spear, remaining focused on the entire island, staying like this until the end of the night, and eventually falls asleep. The next day, Jane sees something very far away in the water, so she goes and swims until she reaches that thing, discovering it is a bag, and swims again hoping to find other things. She finds a very large black circle in the water, takes the bucket and bag, and returns to the beach, finding clothes and sneakers inside the bag. At night, Jane changes her clothes and wears the clothes she found in the bag to keep warm. She opens the box she found with the bag and finds pictures of people staring at them. Suddenly, Jane hears the sound of a plane above her, so she takes the flare gun she has and shoots it into the sky, waiting for someone to rescue her from the plane. But suddenly, Jane sees a large, wild creature coming out of the sea, so she panics and quickly runs back to the fire, takes her spear, and enters the forest, finding a place to hide from that creature. After a while, she hears the monster's sound nearby and is terrified, but eventually realizes it has gone and comes out of her hiding place. During the day, Jane runs to the place where she was sitting and looks at the pictures she found again. Knowing that the people in the pictures were a family, she sees one in a photo standing next to a tree, hanging her bag on it, which is the same bag Jane found. Jane notices in the picture the creature's eyes shining in the dark and decides to leave the island. She takes her life jacket, puts it in the bag, and goes to the sea to use it as a boat. But the bag is not suitable for this task and cannot support Jane's body size, so she falls into the water. Jane becomes desperate and decides to stay on the island, going to the open tree branch and deciding to sleep inside it, placing her weapon beside her. At night, the monster emerges from the water and returns to the island. Jane hears its voice and decides to remain quiet, making no sound. The monster approaches a tree branch, grabs it, and keeps twisting it left and right, but Jane stays silent. Eventually, the monster leaves the island. During the day, Jean climbs down from the branch and goes fishing to provide food for the monster. She manages to catch a small shark and hangs it on the tree for the monster to take when it comes back. At night, Jane hides in front of the shark, waiting for the monster, but it doesn't appear. She falls asleep for a bit, wakes up, and realizes the shark is gone, understanding that the monster has taken it. On the second day, Jean sits and sharpens her spear, but she sees a man on the beach. She runs quickly to him and finds his body torn apart and his face disfigured. Jean takes the corpse and hangs it as food for the monster. That night, Jean hides and watches the man's body, and she sees the monster come and take the corpse into the sea. She hears the sound of a plane overhead, but she can't go out because the monster will kill her, leaving her feeling extremely sad. The next day, Jean makes a bed high in the trees, hoping the monster cannot reach her up there and that she will be safe. When night falls, a storm brews, and the weather turns bad. Jean hears the monster's voice nearby, and unfortunately, it notices her. Suddenly, the tree she is on shakes and drops her from the bed. Jean falls to the ground and runs while screaming, but the monster continues to chase her, jumps in front of her, hits her hard, and throws her aside. At that moment, Eileen looks at the monster and sees it has vanished from the island, while Jean remains injured and hides in the forest. The next day, Jean enters the water, washes her body of blood, changes her clothes, and looks at the sea. Jean speaks to the water and swims towards the boat, where she finds her friend Lucas and his girlfriend Mia, Brad's friend who died. Jean brings them to the island and is relieved they are still alive. She prepares food and drink from the fridge and warns them about the monster that inhabits the island, stressing the need for them to leave immediately. But Lucas calms her down, telling her she is imagining things, which angers Jean. She tells them about the black circle in the sea and how the monster takes the corpses there. No one believes her, so she shows them the family photo she found on the island to prove it, and points out the monster's eye in the pictures. However, neither Lucas nor Mia believes her, and they say they can wait for Brad, who might still be alive. Jean shocks them, saying the monster killed Brad and took him to the black circle, and that he is dead. Jean tells Mia that she was scared in the middle of the sea on the boat, counting the days as each could be the last. Jean replies that she prefers to stay at sea rather than remain on the island for the monster to eat her. But Mia insists that staying on the island is better because they found food and fire. Jean smiles and sits with Lucas, telling him they must leave the island before nightfall because the monster appears at night. But Lucas says he has been through a tough time at sea and does not want to return, as they have no food or fire, plus the storms. Jean insists on leaving because she will not sacrifice her life after finding a boat to escape. She asks Lucas for the knife to catch food because the spear is unsuitable. Lucas calms her down, and Jean goes fishing. When Jean opens the knife, she finds traces of blood, realizing that Lucas and Mia do not want to return to the sea because of what happened to them. She remembers their third friend on the boat and suspects they may have eaten him out of hunger. She doesn't care, and after gathering food, she goes to her friends to leave the island. But they tell her they will not leave, as they do not believe in the monster's existence. They accuse her of being crazy and suggest making a signal for the planes. Jean insists on leaving because the island is cursed. She tries to convince them to board the boat, but they refuse. Lucas gets angry and says they will stay. Jean feels sad and goes to the water to calm her nerves. She considers taking the boat and escaping. She begins to execute her plan, but Mia sees her and tells Lucas. They try to stop her. She kicks Mia, but Lucas restrains her. Mia hits Jean on the head with a stick, knocking her unconscious. When Jean wakes up, she finds herself tied to a tree. Mia apologizes, saying she had to do it. Jean asks to be untied because they will die from the monster. They accuse her of lying, being selfish, and not trusting them. Lucas tells them there are no monsters. Jean screams that the monster comes out of the water. Mia gets angry and goes to the beach. Lucas tells Jean that he no longer loves her and wants to leave the island. Jean tries to win back his feelings and asks to be untied. Lucas refuses, saying she will die in the sea. He continues to scold her. Jean defends herself, telling him the island is full of food, but she fears the monster. Jean smiles at the blood on the knife. They hear Mia's voice crying for help. Lucas takes a torch and runs towards her, leaving Jean tied up. Lucas discovers that the monster is real. He strikes it with the torch, but the monster is unaffected, hits Lucas, and throws him away. Jean manages to free herself and runs towards her friends. When she reaches them, she sees the monster taking Mia into the water and the black circle. Lucas looks at Mia in shock. Jean runs into the forest. The monster returns to them once more, and they remain in the jungle until the next morning. During the day, we see Lucas in a tree, unwilling to come down because he fears the monster is still nearby. Jen tells him that the monster only appears at night and that she has never seen it during the day. Lucas climbs down, and they both decide to escape the island immediately. They gather the supplies they will take with them, while Lucas continues to blame himself for not listening to her or to May. which resulted in the death of their friend. Jen asks him for help in collecting the supplies for their boat. She goes fishing and shows Lucas how to do it, and they grill the fish because it will be their last meal together. Jen then leaves to enter the jungle and retrieve the expired medicine she found in the family bag. When she returns to Lucas, they load everything into the boat and push it into the water to set off. Jen gets inside the boat and notices blood on the floor, triggering memories of their third friend who had been with them on the boat. When Lucas boards, Jen feels scared of him as her suspicions grow, fearing he might turn on her and eat her too. Lucas continues to paddle the boat away from the island, heading west, where planes fly, hoping for a rescue. Suddenly, Lucas spots something moving in the water directly beneath them. The monster tries to pull Lucas into the sea with its hand, but Lucas is quicker and jumps back into the boat in terror. The monster attacks them from below, striking the boat from all sides. They are terrified and shocked, believing the monster only appears at night. Suddenly, the monster punctures the boat from underneath and reaches out to grab Jen, but she fights back, hitting it with everything she can to keep it away. Lucas helps his friend by firing a flare at the monster, successfully hitting it, which enrages the creature and makes it retreat into the water. The problem now is that water begins to flood the boat, causing it to gradually sink as they ponder their next move. Suddenly, the monster pulls Jen from the boat into the water, dragging her to its dark lair to consume her. We see the monster's body, which is half human and half shark. Jen recalls she has Lucas's knife used for cooking, so she stabs the monster, causing it to bleed a black liquid as she escapes. Meanwhile, Lucas jumps into the water to save his friend and confronts the monster. The monster charges at Lucas, managing to seize him and drag him to its lair. Jen cannot catch up or help him, helplessly watching her friend die before her eyes. Quickly, she exits the water, crying over the tragedy, but ultimately decides to return to the island. She discovers that the waves have brought the boat back to her, though it is damaged and no longer seaworthy for escape. Jen resolves to confront the monster, set a trap, and take revenge for her friends to escape the island, knowing she must eliminate the monster for the sea to be safe. Before taking action, she writes a letter in her diary detailing everything that has happened since she woke up on the island until her decision to kill the monster, so that if she dies, anyone who finds the island will know of the monster's existence. After writing the letter, she stands up and begins to execute her plan, trapping the monster in a ring of fire and burning it. She gathers a large amount of wood and sharpens it into a spear. Then, Jen collects the bones of the deceased she found in graves to enhance her spear and place them atop the sharpened wood. At night, the monster emerges from the water and enters the island in search of Jen. But she is clever and sets a trap with finely ground fish meat in a specific spot. When the monster approaches to take the bait, the area suddenly ignites, trapping it in a circle of fire. The monster desperately seeks an escape route before it succumbs to the flames. Suddenly, Jen appears from behind with her spear, attempting to stab it, and she succeeds, piercing the monster's belly before hiding behind a tree. The monster is momentarily distracted, allowing Jen to charge at it again for a second stab, but this time it notices her and strikes her with a powerful blow, sending her flying. Despite the pain, Jen does not give up. She rises once more to strike the monster, but it retaliates, knocking her to the ground. Lying on the ground, Jen smiles in an attempt to escape, but the monster drags her by the leg, lifting her into the air while stomping on her face violently. In a moment of desperation, Jen manages to grab a sharpened stick and stabs the monster until it tires and releases her. She runs toward the shore, pursued by the monster. Jen stops to fight again, but suddenly the monster collapses to the ground. Seizing the opportunity, she grabs her spear, stabs the monster, and decapitates it. From a distance, we see Jen walking towards the boat that the monster had destroyed, holding its head as proof of her triumph over a creature that had killed many before her. And thus, we reach the end of our film. Thank you for watching.